All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack exactly how the legacy of a medieval Himalayan empire manages to survive today, both in solid stone and, well, in spirit. We're looking at a truly fascinating piece of history from Uttarakhand in India and western Nepal. It's the story of the Katyuri Dynasty. This was a sprawling kingdom that rose to immense power, fell into spectacular ruin, and yet somehow absolutely refused to be forgotten.
So how exactly does a fallen empire live on? I wanted to start with this question because, most empires just kind of fade into dusty textbooks, right? Or maybe they leave behind a few crumbling walls that tourists just walk right past. But the Katyurias, they found a totally different path to immortality. Instead of just lingering in the archaeological records, the very essence of their rule, their heroes, their deities, they are actively summoned right back into the present day.
See, up in the hills of Uttarakhand and Nepal, history isn't just remembered, it is literally woken up. We're talking about the tradition of jagar. The word itself comes from the Sanskrit root jaga, which quite literally means to wake. Think of it as a highly localized shamanic ritual deeply tied to the pursuit of divine justice. Through jagar, dormant gods and local deities are jolted from their slumber and asked for favors, remedies, or even penance. It's just this incredible mechanism for preserving the past. But to understand who exactly is getting woken up, we really need to rewind to the beginning.
Okay, so the story kicks off around 700 CE with King Vasudev. He carved out a kingdom deep in the Alaknanda Valley, which eventually boomed and shifted its capital to Baidyanath around 850 CE. For centuries, this empire just thrived, building up a vibrant, dynamic culture across the mountains. But, as you can probably guess, peace never lasts forever. By 1065 CE, a bitter civil war completely shattered the kingdom from the inside out.
Now, you've got to understand, this wasn't just some tiny, isolated mountain tribe. No, this was a massive, sprawling powerhouse of a medieval sovereignty. I mean, at its absolute peak, the Katyuri Empire stretched all the way from Sikkim in the east to Kabul, Afghanistan in the west. That is a massive footprint. They were a formidable force known as the Katyur around the Hindu Kush region, and they managed vast territories, even setting up a trading center at Brahmadev Mandi in Nepal, a place that actually still exists by that exact name today.
But you know how it goes. Absolute power often brings absolute corruption. The empire's dramatic collapse really started with this tyrant, King Virdeo. The guy was ruthless. He collected crushing taxes and literally forced his own people to work as his slaves. But the absolute breaking point, the scandal that truly doomed the whole operation, was when he forcibly married his own maternal aunt, Tilla. This horrific act, and his death soon after, sparked a ruinous civil war among his sons. The whole kingdom just shattered into a bunch of independent principalities.
The trauma of Virdeo's tyranny was so intense, so profound, that it was literally sung into the region's memory. The famous folk song Mami Tilde Daro Vala was born directly out of that scandalous marriage, and incredibly, it is still sung today. It just goes to show how the people of the Himalayas encoded all that trauma and history into their oral traditions, basically guaranteeing that the story of this fallen empire would outlast the empire itself.
Now, even as the political empire was totally fragmenting into smaller domains, their magnificent physical legacy was already locked in stone. The Katyuri kings kicked off this massive temple-building frenzy between the 7th and 11th centuries. They basically used the mountain's natural resources, wood and stone, to forge a completely distinct style of art and architecture that amazingly still flourishes across Uttarakhand right now.
Get this, 124. That staggering number represents the amount of stone temples in just one single cluster, the incredibly atmospheric Jagdeshwar Dham. Nestled on the bank of the river Jatganga at over 6,100 feet in this dense, wooded valley, it's just breathtaking. Enclosed by these towering ancient deodar trees, these 124 temples feel entirely detached from modern time, just standing as silent witnesses to the Katyuri kings who built them. These structures aren't just random ruins, they are the solid physical anchors of a fallen empire. We're talking about marvels like the ancient Vasudev temple in Joshimath, often considered the oldest stone temple in Uttarakhand, along with that massive Jagdeshwar Dham cluster, and the spectacular 44-temple Kadarmal Surya complex. They are absolutely stunning monuments, built to honor deities like Shiva and Surya, marking the entire landscape with this undeniable grandeur.
But here's the thing about physical monuments. They can crumble. Or in the sad case of the Kadarmal temple, priceless idols can actually be stolen. Stones can be broken, artifacts vanish. So to truly survive the test of centuries, the Katyuri legacy needed to evolve into something untouchable. It couldn't just be an object, it needed to become a living, breathing practice.
Which brings us right back to the nighttime shamanic ritual of Jogger. The actual kings, heroes, and deities of the Katyuri era are called upon for justice and protection right inside the living rooms of local families. This isn't some passive, quiet religious service. It is an intense, active invocation. A local family will host this ritual in a purified room with a sacred fire, using music as a direct bridge across time to summon these historical figures to help solve their modern-day problems.
Making this cosmic connection requires a really fascinating partnership. It's basically a spiritual division of labor. On one side, you have the Jagaria, the lead musical storyteller who sings these epic ballads to invoke the gods. And on the other side is the Dungaria. The word actually comes from the Kumaoni term for way, because they literally show the way for the gods. They serve as the physical conduit, surrendering their own body to enter a trance state and become a vessel for the ancient spirits.
The ceremony itself follows a really strict, structured escalation. First, it starts off gently with the Sanjwali Geet, essentially a plea for help to successfully complete the ritual. Then the energy ramps up into the Burwai phase, where the epic tales and adventures of the deity are sung out loud. Finally, the whole thing culminates in the Orsound, an absolute frenzied climax where the physical embodiment actually takes place.
As the ritual blasts into that final Azuan phase, it's the hypnotic, rising volume of native percussion instruments that actually drives the Dengaria into their physical trance. You've got the hurka, the damaru, the booming beat of the dole and damo, and the sharp, piercing ring of the thali. The rhythm accelerates, the volume swells into this cowering wall of sound, and the energy in the room shifts completely, pulling the ancient spirit right into the medium.
When you hear the translated lyrics of these Kumaoni ballads chanted over the rhythmic beating of the hurka in the pitch dark, wow, you can practically feel the mists of medieval history rolling straight into the room. Just listen to this line from the invocation of the deity Gangnath, "O begging fakir, wandering colorful yogi, begging fakir." The music and the poetry just meld together flawlessly to blur the line between today and the ancient era of the Katyuri kings.
And right here is where history truly blurs with the divine. Historical figures from this era, like King Brahmadeo, well, they aren't just names stuck in a textbook. No way! They have been elevated to revered local deities who actively participate in the community today. King Brahmadeo is quite literally part of the living, breathing spiritual ecosystem of the Himalayas. They ask him for protection, he dispenses justice, and these figures continue to actively guide the people of Uttarakhand and Nepal.
So I really hope this explainer leaves you marveling at how the Katyuri dynasty managed to cheat time. They survived not just as magnificent stone temples hidden away in a deodar forest, but as living spirits summoned by a drumbeat in the dead of night. It completely flips the script on what it means for an empire to leave a legacy. They built grand monuments, for sure, but their ultimate survival tactic was weaving their history into the very souls and the very songs of their people. Which leaves us with one powerful question. If we can literally wake the past through song, is history ever truly dead?